Hello, welcome to CGTN. This is our special coverage on China's political season known as the Two Sessions. Live from Beijing, I'm Pan Deng. China's top legislature, the National People's Congress, will start its annual session on Sunday. This year is the first for China to fully implement guiding principles that were decided during the 20th National Congress of the Communist Party of China last October. Global attention has been on how China will move forward on this journey and provide the world with new opportunities through its own development. Newly elected deputies attending this year's gathering are expected to put forward their proposals on major political, economic and social issues. Authorities will soon brief the media on the session's agenda and take questions from reporters. For more insight, I'm also joined in the studio by Professor Xia Lu from Renmin University of China. Thank you very much for joining us indeed. So staying with our coverage, our reporter Huang Yue has been standing by at venue ahead of the National People's Congress press conference.
I'm now at the press room of the Great Hall of the People in downtown Beijing, and as you can see, reporters from both home and abroad are taking the seats, and camera operators are making last-minute preparation because the press conference of the first plenary session of the 14th National People's Congress, or NPC, is about to start very soon. The spokesperson will brief the media on the agenda of this year's session and take questions from journalists. Every year, the press conference ahead of the session will attract a lot of attention because it will offer a window for the world to learn more about China's socio-economic development plans for the year. And as we know, the NPC is the top legislature of the country, so usually reporters will ask questions about China's legislative work, economic growth, reform, opening up, and rural revitalization. While international journalists are concerned about China's defense budget, bilateral relations with other countries, and policies affecting foreign businesses. This year also marks the 10th anniversary of the Belt and Road Initiative, so possibly we might also hear the question about this topic. Although the plenary session of the NPC has been held annually since 1978, this year's session carries special significance because it will witness the implementation of the calls made during the 20th National Congress of the CPC, which concluded in October last year. It will also outline the blueprint of China's growth after the country overcame the COVID-19 pandemic and brief the world on China's proposition on major international issues as the country is now facing a more complicated external environment. As we speak, about 3,000 deputies from across the country have arrived in Beijing for the meeting, and we're looking forward to their motions and their suggestions this year.
Our reporter Huang Yue there. Now, nearly 3,000 deputies have been elected to the 14th National People's Congress. They come from a wide range of backgrounds, from medical care workers to religious personnel. Some of them have spoken about topics of their concern.
This year, I'd like to propose that new technologies registered in China be recognized by countries in the Belt and Road Initiative. Clearing legal obstacles will help us tremendously in accessing overseas markets.
The NPC deputy is for the people. On one hand, I will think of the people from my electoral district. On the other, I need to consider my industry at the national level. The quality and price of medicine is an example. High-quality medicine is welcomed by farmers, but if the selling price is the same as badly made medicine, they won't be willing to grow it anymore. This is a call from medicine farmers that I need to heed.
I've received many foreign visitors, diplomats and journalists. Some of them asked whether the government suppresses us Muslims or restricts our customs and rituals. I told them that was not true, and I wish they can see the truth by themselves.
We're proud to see China's hydrogen industry, as well as the hydrogen fuel cell industry, is among the world's first tier. And we'd expect that China would not only at least keep that position, but it also stands the good chance to become the number one. China is developing faster than its competitors in a number of hydrogen refueling stations. Its hydrogen-powered vehicles development and the overall field of hydrogen application.
For more insights, let's talk to Professor Xia Lu from Renmin University of China. Professor, as we just reported, this is the first year for China to fully implement the principles decided at the 20th CPC National Congress last October. Remind us those principles in focus this year.
Well, one of the key words in last year's 20th National Congress of the CPC was and is the Chinese version of modernization or Chinese style of modernization. It is a very kind of complicated and encompassing all aspects, this kind of concept. So it involves the economic construction, economic development, and social development, and even the balance between the economic development and the natural or the ecological reserves, this kind of thing. So in my opinion, this year's, the first session of the 14th National Congress will be, ratifying some kind of laws and regulations relating to how to implement, in reality, how to implement the Chinese version of modernization. And not only for this year, but also for the next 5 years. We all know that this is the term for the 14th National Congress and the new term of the national leaders. So it is important here.
So talking about China's socio-economic development, we know the country is in its third year of its 14th five-year plan. Now, if you count the number 3, would you say it's kind of a make or break point for the implementation, successful implementation of this 5-year plan?
Yes, in my opinion, actually it was, or it has been, in the process of getting the success of the 14th kind of 5-year plan, because also one of the key words of the 14th 5-year plan was and is the new development paradigm, a new development, let's say, order. And this kind of new development order is kind of a structural change for China's economic, let's say, structure and circumstances. Well, we can argue that, during the last 2 or 3 years, there was some kind of a serious impact on China's economy. Well, still, we are on the right track to recovery. We're on the right track to regain some kind of energy or the dynamism of Chinese economy. So the new development paradigm will also be the focus of this year's kind of National People's Congress.
Now, you used the term right track for China's economic development. Are you talking about high quality development, this very concept?
Exactly, high quality development, yes. Actually, this high quality development is also, well, the keywords actually was and is the keywords of the 14th 5-year plan. And also, we actually have at least 5 dimensions to understand or to, get into the real essence of the high quality development. First of all, it is also, it is the innovation driven economy. Innovation driven, the technological innovation driven economy. And this actually is what we can expect from this year's National People's Congress. And second, actually, the high quality development is a sharing economy. This sharing means that each and every citizen, each and every member of Chinese nation can share the benefit of the development, and they have, the high expectation for their future. And also, this high quality development is sustainable development. That means that this kind of development should not take the cost of the nature, should not take the cost of the natural or ecological the circumstances. So we can say the high quality development map out a very good picture for the future, but we still need to, down to the earth in terms of implementation and realization of the policy.
Staying with this economic topic, talking about the road ahead, and you mentioned the recovery, what are the major challenges there? Because the whole world is not exactly in the optimistic field for a global recovery, at least at this very point.
Yes. Actually, ever since last year, the November last year and December, and especially the Central Economic Conference, since that time, well, 3 keywords actually were, let's say, were kind of repeatedly, emerged in the media outlet. That was first is consumption, and the second is, let's say, the foreign, trade, and the third is the infrastructure, the new kind of infrastructure. So these 3 mechanism, or these 3, let's say, driving force become significant, more and more significant for the recovery, not only for China, but also for the entire world economy. We know that there is a weakness, and obvious weakness in terms of people's consumption. Let's say, people do not want to spend money. It doesn't mean that there is no way to spend. It means that they don't have enough money, they don't have enough kind of saving. So the first and the foremost important thing here is to, increase people's confidence that they can have more saving, they can have more way to, spend money in order order to boom the economy. So that's the first one. The second one is the community or the international community in terms of the goods, in terms of the energy, in terms of the all these kind of supporting let's say chains. So that is also important. But we know of course there are some kind of obstacles in this kind of international, let's say, communication. But this is the challenging, but this is also the opportunity for the recovery. So we have, for me, I myself have confidence in the future, and I think this is also the job of the National People's Congress to to input some kind of confidence, not only in China but also for the rest of the world.
This leads us to another crucial concept, that is the dual circulation of the Chinese economy ahead. Of course, one's on domestic and one's on international. Clarify that to our international audience. How does it work?
Well, this also related to one of the kind of keywords repeatedly kind of appeared in the news outlet. That's the new paradigm, the new development paradigm, and that's kind of a new development paradigm focused more on the circulation of China's inner, or China as a unified market or as a unified economy. Because previously, or in the first or second stage of China's reform, part of China's region, they got more connection with the outside world. They got more, let's say, supporting material from outside the world. However, they didn't have enough connection with the other part of China. But next stage for China's deep reform, this kind of thing or this kind of situation should be changed and should be, let's say, improved. That means China's each and every part of China should get together or get connected, not in terms of politically, but in terms of economically, this kind of thing. So that would make China become stronger and stronger in terms of its inner, energy or inner impetus of the economy. So that's the essence of, one of the essence of the new development paradigm. But that does not necessarily mean to cut off the relation between China and the rest of the world. No, it's not like that. China should always open its kind of door. China should always get involved in the international political and economic situation. But that does not mean China should always follow the rule made by other member of the community. No, China should get involved in this international community and also try to do some kind of a job to improve the international order in terms of the relation between developing country and the developed country. So that is also the new development paradigm.
Right, equal footing and mutually beneficial. Professor, we'll be getting back to you on this very soon.
Thank you very much.
Chinese modernization is socialist modernization pursued under the leadership of the Communist Party of China. It contains elements that are common to the modernization process of all countries, but it's more characterized by features that are unique to the Chinese context. It's the modernization of a huge population, as China is working to achieve modernization for more than 1.4 billion people, unprecedented in human history. And achieving common prosperity is a defining feature of socialism with Chinese characteristics. For socialist modernization, material abundance and cultural ethical enrichment are fundamental goals. China is committed to sustainable development and dedicated to peace, development, cooperation and mutual benefit while pursuing modernization. China adopts a two-step strategic plan to build a great modern socialist country in all respects. The first is from 2020 through 2035, then from 2035 through the middle of this century. So, Professor, continuing on this very important concept of Chinese modernization, earlier we talked about the economic side quite a lot, but what about democracy? Two sessions are Chinese democracy in action. It's quite fair to say that, and let's look at the deputies for this year's 14th National People's Congress plenary session. Over 2,900 deputies have been elected. Tell us a little bit more about their representation and the demographics.
Yes, actually, it is a very interesting kind of question. If we get into the data, just now you mentioned the data, we have, let's say, nearly 3,000 deputies. And actually...
let's remember, we have 1.4 billion people in this country.
Exactly. And in terms of this, we have more than 1 billion voters. All these kind of 2,964 deputies, they got elected by the 1 billion voters, but not directly voted by the 1 billion voters. because only the county level and township level, they were directly elected by the 1 billion voters. And then from level through the 5 layers of this kind of political structure, they got elected final to the national level. And this kind of 2,900 deputies, they got a wide range of representation or representing, because they represent not only the cadres, the state manager or state kind of governor, also representing the first line, the direct workers, and let's say peasant, and even this kind of migrant workers, and even those kind of teachers like me, and all they have a very wide representing in terms of the social category and occupation, region, and even ethnicity. So we can say that it is a wide representation in terms of that people's opinion could be and should be heard by the national leaders. So it is one of the essence of Chinese, let's say, whole process people's democracy.
Tell us a little bit more about this whole process people's democracy, and let's take your campus for an example. Does your campus have NPC deputies this time, and how are they elected?
Yes, we have one actually a deputy of the national, our president, the chancellor of our university.
Right.
Actually, he is the deputy, and he's representing Beijing region. And how was he got elected? Actually, last year, and from September, October, November, we had this kind of a grassroots election, and this grassroots election just representing the county level and township level, and we nominate this candidate, and this candidate got into the next level, the Beijing municipal level, and then through the national level. So during this process, this candidate got reviewed in terms of his quality. Can he represent the rest of us? Can he has the ability to do this kind of deliberative democracy or consultative democracy? Actually, all this evidence support he has the ability. So he got elected, and we also, as the normal people, as ordinary people, we experienced this kind of whole process people's democracy. It means that this whole process does not only mean election. This only one, let's say, kind of session. It means reviewing. It means supervision. It means that once the candidate got elected, he has the ability. We entrusted to him, and he can have the ability to review the policy proposed by other deputy, and he can also propose some kind of policy initiative. So actually, this is the essence of the whole process people's democracy. Means that the democracy is a process. Democracy does not only mean election, and democracy has the ability to encompass all the members into this public affair, so that we can get educated in this process.
How about we focus now on one segment of that whole process, that is NPC deputies' work during the plenary session.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit more about their work.
They, as the deputies in this kind of session, they have a general assembly. For example, in the opening session, right after the opening session and before the ending session, they have a general assembly. That means the 2,900 people sitting together, talk about things or talk about issues. And then during this plenary session, they have a subcommittee, or let's say subcommission. They can review the report by the premier, by other kind of state organ leaders, and they can also propose the a draft of new laws, new regulations, and this kind of initiation proposal of the new draft laws, law regulation should also be reviewed at least for 3 times until it becomes a new law or a real official law. So during this process, I can say, or I can argue that their main job is to hold sessions, to read a document, to discuss a real issue, and to put to generate all the kind of opinions and ideas from the ordinary people, so that it can become part of the national policy in the future.
I know Chinese politics is part of your professional expertise. Tell us, how does supervision work after the plenary session?
Yes, supervision actually it is important. Let's say one of the important segments of Chinese politics, because people realize that not everyone is pure nice. Sometimes people will, or sometimes people just couldn't help making mistakes, and then this kind of deputies can hold these officials accountable. So that's the way, or that's the one of the key words in political science, like accountability or accountability. accountable. So people elect the deputy, and they make laws, and they ratify some kind of document, and they also, representing the people to hold the official accountable. And if this kind of official, executive official, couldn't be accountable, then this deputy can ask them to, to correct their mistakes, or in the future to do right things, and even, can put them into some kind of judgment, so that all the policy could be handled and implemented by the right people and the nice people.
Right, as you just mentioned, you've already participated in this whole process, people's democracy. So for you as an educator in higher education, what are some of the topics you concern so much this year? And also let's take to the big picture, what are the national topics you're focusing on?
That's the reform, or the party and the state organ reform, because we know that in the second plenary session of the 20th Central Committee, actually it just gave the information that this year's National People's Congress will focus on the reform, as the party and the state organ reform. And we also discussed that what is the background, or what are the backgrounds of this reform. Actually, this reform should be suited, this kind of state and party organs reform should be suited or fit to the socio-economic reform that has been launched ever since the new era, the 2012. So we can say that this is a parallel reform. Not only should reform happen in socio-economic arena or fields, but also there should be some political reform or political, let's say, change, so that it can parallel or suit the socio-economic reform. So we can say this is what we expect in this year's National People's Congress. And also there will be more, let's say, strong kind of confidence in terms of how should the people maintain confidence in terms of economic construction, and how should the people maintain the confidence in terms of China's image in the international order, right? So these are also the topics that we discussed in my class. Yeah.
What about your prediction or forecast on major items on the agenda this time, especially those concerning to people's daily lives and well-being?
Actually, it is just expectation. Actually, we expect that there will be some kind of stimulus or stimulating policy in terms of people's kind of increase of ordinary people's saving, or ordinary people's earning, this kind of thing, because that is one of the strong, a driving force for China's economy. People should have more, money or saving or earning at their discretion, so that they can have more, money to spend. And this is also important to China's kind of the big picture of Chinese economy, because it cannot only focus or cannot only rely on pure foreign trade or the investment in infrastructure. So people should have more stimulus in terms of their saving and their earning in order to pursue, in order to consumption. Yeah.
Well, Professor, let's go to the press conference held by the 14th National People's Congress ahead of its opening on Sunday. You're watching live footage from Beijing. The press conference is about to start. A spokesperson for this year's National People's Congress plenary session will talk to journalists from all around the world. You're watching live footage from Beijing. This is the press conference for the 14th plenary session of the National People's Congress.
Friends from the media, good afternoon. The press conference for the first session of the 14th National People's Congress now begins. The Presidium of the session just held its first meeting and appointed Mr. Wang Chao spokesperson of the session. Now the spokesperson will brief you on the agenda of the session and relevant arrangements, and take your questions regarding the agenda and relevant work of the NPC. Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Friends from the media, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Glad to see you all. Welcome to the press conference for the first session of the 14th NPC. A moment ago, the preparatory meeting adopted the agenda of the upcoming NPC session. Of the 2,977 deputies to the 14th NPC, 2,962 have checked in. We now have everything ready for the session. The 20th National Congress of the Communist Party of China drew an ambitious blueprint for building a modern socialist country in all respects and advancing the great rejuvenation of the Chinese nation on all fronts through a Chinese path to modernization. The upcoming NPC session is held in the first year of fully implementing the guiding principles of the 20th CPC Congress. It will usher in a new term of the NPC and mark a key milestone in the political calendar of China. The upcoming session will follow the guidance of Xi Jinping thought on socialism with Chinese characteristics for the new era, fully implement the guiding principles of the 20th CPC Congress, and uphold the unity between CPC's leadership, the running of the country by the people, and law-based governance. It will focus on the priorities of the CPC and the country, apply whole process people's democracy, and exercise its functions and responsibilities as stipulated in the Constitution and laws. It will be a democratic, results-oriented, and inspiring session of unity that galvanizes the Chinese people of all ethnic groups to rally more closely around the CPC Central Committee with Comrade Xi Jinping at its core, and work in solidarity to build a modern socialist country in all respects and advance national rejuvenation on all fronts. The session will open on the morning of March the 5th and close on the morning of March the 13th, lasting 8.5 days. There are 9 items on its agenda. First, to deliberate on the report on the work of the government. Second, to review the report on implementing the National Economic and Social Development Plan for last year and the draft plan for this year. Third, to review the report on the execution of the central and local budgets for last year and the draft budgets for this year. Fourth, to deliberate on the bill submitted by the NPC Standing Committee concerning the draft amendment to the legislation law of the People's Republic of China. Fifth, to deliberate on the work report of the NPC Standing Committee. Sixth, to deliberate on the work report of the Supreme People's Court. Seventh, to deliberate on the work report of the Supreme People's Procuratorate. Eighth, to deliberate on the proposal for State Council institutional reform. Ninth, to elect or decide on the appointment of principal members of state institutions' leadership. During the session, interviews may be conducted on-site, via video link, or in writing. There will also be in-person media events, such as press conferences, deputies' corridor, and ministers' corridor. For latest information on the session's program and agenda, relevant documents, reporting materials, and contact details, please follow the updates on the official webpage of the Press Center. To facilitate interviews, each delegation will have a spokesperson, and interview rooms will be set up where the delegations are staying. NPC deputies will also interact with members of the public on relevant topics through online interviews and live streaming. The session will strictly follow the CPC Central Committee's 8-point decision on improving conduct and its detailed rules. We will practice economy and organize the session in an efficient and results-oriented manner. I wish you all the best in your work. Thank you.
The floor is now open for questions.
请东区第2排第1位女士提问，谢谢。
谢谢主持人。中央广播电视总台记者提问：2022年是我国现行宪法公布施行的40周年，这是国家政治生活中的一件大事，具有纪念意义。那过去40年，宪法发挥了哪些重大作用？新时代10年，我国在大力弘扬宪法精神、推动宪法全面实施方面又取得了哪些成效？谢谢。
China Media Group (CCTV) The year 2022 marked the 40th anniversary of the current Constitution's enactment, which is worth commemorating as a milestone in the political life of the country. What role has the Constitution played over the past 40 years? In the decade of the new era, what progress has China made in promoting the spirit of the Constitution and advancing its implementation? Thank you.
谢谢你的提问。现行宪法发挥的重大作用，可以用6个有力来概括。40年的实践充分证明，现行宪法有力坚持了中国共产党领导，有力保障了人民当家作主，有力促进了改革开放和社会主义现代化建设，有力推动了社会主义法治国家进程，有力促进了人权事业发展，有力维护了国家统一、民族团结、社会和谐稳定。
Thank you for the question. The current Constitution has played an effective role in 6 aspects. Over the past 4 decades, it has given a strong boost to upholding the CPC leadership, to making sure that the people run the country, to reform, opening up, and socialist modernization, to the socialist rule of law in the country, to advancing human rights, and to safeguarding national reunification, ethnic unity, and social harmony and stability.
新时代的10年中，2018年，全国人大通过宪法修正案，确立习近平新时代中国特色社会主义思想在国家政治和社会生活中的指导地位。我们进一步完善以宪法为核心的中国特色社会主义法律体系，使宪法在国家各项事业和各方面工作中得以贯彻体现。
In the decade of the new era, the NPC adopted an amendment to the Constitution in 2018, establishing the guiding role of Xi Jinping thought on socialism with Chinese characteristics for the new era in the political and social undertakings of the country. We further improved the socialist legal system with Chinese characteristics with the Constitution at its core and worked to see that the Constitution is implemented and embodied in various undertakings and work.
我们设立了国家宪法日，实行了宪法宣誓制度，实施了特赦制度，对遇到的新情况、新问题，根据宪法精神和有关法律原则，作出创制性规定，及时妥善处理。
We designated the National Constitution Day and put in place the system of pledging allegiance to the Constitution and the system of special amnesty. For the new developments and new problems that arise, we acted in the spirit of the Constitution and relevant principles of the law and made new institutional arrangements to address them in a timely and appropriate manner.
我们按照全面发挥宪法在立法中核心地位功能的要求，推进立法过程中的合宪性审查工作，创制性运用宪法制度和宪法规定，应对治国理政中遇到的重大风险挑战。我们对宪法有关外国投资、计划生育等规定的含义提出了解释性意见。
In legislation, we fully leveraged the Constitution's central status and function and advanced constitutional review. We applied its institutions and stipulations innovatively to tackle the major risks and challenges in governance. The NPC Standing Committee also offered opinions on the interpretation of constitutional provisions on foreign investment and family planning.
2022年12月，现行宪法公布施行40周年之际， 习近平总书记发表重要文章。全国人大及其常委会将全面贯彻落实党的20大精神，深入学习贯彻习近平总书记关于宪法的重要论述精神，坚定不移走中国特色社会主义法治道路，谱写新时代中国宪法实践的新篇章。谢谢。
In December 2022, an important article by General Secretary Xi Jinping was published on the 40th anniversary of the current Constitution's enactment. The NPC and its Standing Committee will fully implement the guiding principles of the 20th CPC National Congress, continue to study and act on General Secretary Xi Jinping's important remarks on the Constitution, follow the path of socialist rule of law with Chinese characteristics, and write a new chapter in implementing the Constitution in the new era. Thank you.
谢谢，请继续提问。请西区第一排第3位女士提问，谢谢。
谢谢主持人。人民日报记者提问：党的20大对完善以宪法为核心的中国特色社会主义法律体系作出了全面部署。全国人大常委会将在今年编制新的5年立法规划。请问，在过去5年，我国法律规范体系建设取得哪些新进展？下一阶段立法工作又将如何体现党的20大报告关于全面依法治国的要求？谢谢。
People's Daily. The 20th CPC Congress made comprehensive plans on improving the socialist legal system with Chinese characteristics with the Constitution at its core. This year, the NPC Standing Committee will compile a new 5-year legislative plan. My questions are, what new progress has been made in standardizing the legal system over the past 5 years? And how will the future legislative efforts contribute to the goal of exercising law-based governance on all fronts as laid out in the report to the 20th CPC Congress? Thank you.
谢谢你的提问。13届全国人大常委会坚持以习近平新时代中国特色社会主义思想为指导，贯彻习近平法治思想，深入推进科学立法、民主立法、依法立法，法律规范体系建设取得历史性成就。
Thank you for the question. The Standing Committee of the 13th NPC has followed the guidance of Xi Jinping thought on socialism with Chinese characteristics for the new era, implemented Xi Jinping thought on the rule of law, and advanced sound and democratic lawmaking in accordance with the law. Some historical achievements have been made in building a sound legal system.
这些成就包括通过宪法修正案加强宪法实施和监督，制定法律47件，修改法律111件次，作出法律解释1件，通过有关法律问题和重大问题的决定52件，编纂完成民法典，重要领域和新兴领域立法取得突破，统筹运用、制定、修改、废止、解释、编纂、决定等丰富多样的立法方式，不断拓宽公民有序参与立法的途径。立法生动体现了全过程人民民主的要求。
The achievements include adopting the constitutional amendment and enhancing the Constitution's enforcement and oversight, formulating 47 pieces of law, revising the law 111 times, making one interpretation, adopting 52 decisions on relevant issues of the law and major issues, compiling the civil code, and making breakthroughs in legislation in important and emerging areas, employing diverse legislative means such as formulation, revision, abolishment, interpretation, compilation, and decision, and expanding the channels for citizens to take part in legislation. Whole process people's democracy was manifested throughout the process.
今年全国人大常委会围绕8个方面，初步安排35件继续审议和初次审议的法律案。具体说，这8个方面是：坚持和完善人民代表大会制度，构建高水平社会主义市场经济体制，实施科教兴国战略，推进建设社会主义文化强国，保障和改善民生，推动绿色发展，完善社会治理体系，完善国家安全法治体系等。
This year, the NPC Standing Committee plans to deliberate on 35 proposals that cover 8 areas, namely, upholding and improving the system of people's congresses, building a high-standard socialist market economy, invigorating the country through science and education, turning China into a country with strong socialist culture, ensuring and improving people's well-being, pursuing green development, enhancing the social governance system, and improving the legal system for national security.
目前，14届全国人大常委会立法规划编制工作已经启动，正在向各个方面广泛征集立法项目，将突出重点领域、新兴领域、涉外领域立法，完善以宪法为核心的中国特色社会主义法律体系，为全面建设社会主义现代化国家、全面推进中华民族伟大复兴而提供高质量的法治保障。谢谢。
The Standing Committee of the 14th NPC has already begun to make its legislative plan. It is now soliciting proposals from various sectors, and priority will be given to legislation in key, emerging, and foreign-related areas. All these efforts are aimed at improving the socialist legal system with Chinese characteristics with the Constitution at its core, and provide high-quality legal safeguard for building a modern socialist country in all respects and advancing the great rejuvenation of the Chinese nation on all fronts. Thank you.
谢谢，请继续提问。请东区第3排第2位女士，谢谢。
Thank you. Question from CNA. The NPC put forward a draft foreign relations law last year, which states, among other things, that China can take countermeasures and restrictive measures if necessary. In light of China's challenges abroad, including with the United States, what does this mean for China's foreign policy? Should we expect that moving forward, what has been viewed as a more aggressive approach in the days to come? Thank you.
亚洲新闻台，去年中国全国人大公布了对外关系法草案，其中包括中国在必要时可以采取反制和限制措施。考虑到中国面临的外部挑战，包括涉及美国的挑战，上述措施对中国的外交政策意味着什么？中国外交是否会越来越具有攻击性？谢谢。
谢谢你的提问。一些国家出于私利，频频以不符合国际法的方式滥用国内法的域外适用，对外国实体和个人进行肆意打压。那么这种做法或这种霸凌行径，被国际社会普遍批评为长臂管辖。中方一贯坚决反对这种做法。 针对那些对华无理打压、遏制、粗暴干涉中国内政的行径，中国出台反外国制裁法，阻断外国法律与措施不当域外适用办法、不可靠实体清单、规定等予以反制。
Thank you for the question. Some countries have kept abusing the extraterritorial application of their domestic laws in violation of the international law, with the aim of taking down foreign entities and individuals and serving their own interests. Such bullying acts are widely criticized in the international community as long-arm jurisdiction. China stands firmly against such practices. It has introduced a number of laws and regulations to counter the containment, suppression, and interference in its internal affairs. They include the Anti-Foreign Sanctions Law, the rules on counteracting unjustified extraterritorial application of foreign legislation and other measures, and the provisions on the Unreliable Entity List.
对外关系法作为涉外领域的基础性法律，有必要对反制和限制措施作出原则性的规定。中国的核心利益不容损害，主权和领土完整不容侵犯。对于损害中国主权、安全、发展利益的行为，侵犯中国公民合法权益的行为，我们在法律中作出相关规定，予以坚决反制，是正当和必要的。
The law on foreign relations is a basic law in foreign-related areas. It is necessary for the law to make principled stipulations on countering and repelling measures. China's core interests allow no infringement, and its sovereignty and territorial integrity brook no violation. For acts that undermine China's sovereignty, security, and development interests, and harm the lawful rights and interests of Chinese nationals, the law contains relevant provisions to firmly counter such acts. This is both justifiable and necessary.
在全面建设社会主义现代化国家新征程中，中国实行改革开放的决心和意志是坚定不移的。全国人大及其常委会高度重视维护国家主权、安全、发展利益方面的法治建设，同样高度重视扩大对外开放方面的法治建设。
In the new journey of building a modern socialist country in all respects, China also has unwavering commitment to reform and opening up. While advancing the rule of law in safeguarding national sovereignty, security, and development interests, the NPC and its standing committee attach equal importance to enhancing the legal system with regard to opening up.
中国始终恪守国际法基本原则和国际关系基本准则，坚持维护世界和平，促进共同发展，致力于推动构建人类命运共同体，在和平共处5项原则基础上，同各国发展友好合作。谢谢。
China is all along committed to the basic principles of the international law and the basic norms governing international relations. China has been working hard to safeguard world peace, promote common development, grow friendship and cooperation with all countries based on the 5 principles of peaceful coexistence, and build a community with a shared future for mankind. Thank you.
谢谢，请继续提问。请西区第2排第3位女士，谢谢。
谢谢主持人。中国日报记者提问：“一带一路”倡议提出10年来，取得了一系列国际合作成果，但也有个别国家质疑中国与沿线国家的合作引发了债务风险。中国对非洲的减债行动不利，请问发言人您有何评价？谢谢。
China Daily. Over the past 10 years, the Belt and Road Initiative has delivered many outcomes of international cooperation. But there is also criticism that China's cooperation with BRI partner countries has led to debt risks, and that China is not doing enough to ease the debt burden of African countries. Mr. Spokesperson, how do you respond to that?
谢谢你的提问。2013年，习近平主席着眼于人类前途命运以及中国和世界的发展大势，提出了“一带一路”倡议。
Thank you for the question. In 2013, President Xi Jinping proposed the Belt and Road Initiative, bearing in mind the future of humanity and the overarching trends in the development of China and the world.
10年来，在各方的共同努力下，“一带一路”的朋友圈不断扩大。现在已经有150多个国家和30多个国际组织签署了合作文件。“一带一路”的务实合作持续深化拓展，为各国发展经济、增加就业、改善民生做出了积极贡献，已经成为深受欢迎的国际公共产品和国际合作平台。
Over the past decade, with the joint efforts of all parties concerned, the friends of the BRI have kept expanding. Now, over 150 countries and 30-plus international organizations have signed BRI cooperation documents. Practical cooperation under the initiative has kept deepening and expanding, making important contributions to the economy, employment, and livelihood of countries concerned. The BRI has become a highly popular international public good and cooperation platform.
开展“一带一路”合作，中国从不附加任何政治条件，也从不谋取任何政治私利。那么个别国家说中国在非洲制造债务陷阱，那我们可以看一看国际组织的统计数字是怎么说的。
In carrying out Belt and Road cooperation, China never attaches any political strings or seeks any selfish political gains. As for the claim that China is creating the so-called debt traps in Africa, let's take a look at the statistics from international organizations.
根据世界银行等国际组织的统计，中国不是非洲债务的最大债权方，多边金融机构和商业债权人在非洲所持债权占到了非洲整体外债的近3/4，他们才真正在非洲债务中占据大头。
According to the World Bank, China is not the largest creditor of Africa. Nearly 3/4 of Africa's external debt is owed to multilateral financial institutions and commercial creditors. In other words, they account for the bulk of Africa's debt.
中国始终致力于帮助非洲减缓债务压力，积极参与20国集团缓债倡议和个案债务处理，是20国集团成员中落实缓债金额最大的国家。
China has been working hard to help Africa ease the debt burden. It has taken an active part in the Debt Service Suspension Initiative under the G20, as well as in the handling of individual cases. Among all G20 members, China contributed the largest debt deferral amount.
在“一带一路”倡议10周年这个重要的历史时点上，我们愿意与共建“一带一路”伙伴一道，回顾成就， 总结经验，规划未来，继续推动高质量共建“一带一路”取得新的发展。
On this historical occasion of the 10th anniversary of the Belt and Road Initiative, China stands ready to join hands with all partners to review achievements, sum up experience, plan for the future, and work for new progress in high-quality Belt and Road cooperation.
中国全国人大愿与“一带一路”国家立法机构加强交流与合作，为“一带一路”建设提供坚实的法治保障。谢谢。
The National People's Congress of China stands ready to further step up exchanges and cooperation with counterparts in BRI partner countries to provide sound legal safeguard for Belt and Road cooperation. Thank you.
谢谢，请继续提问。请东区第一排中间这位男士提问，谢谢。
因是俄罗斯国际通讯社、俄罗斯卫星通讯社。一段时间以来，中欧之间的分歧有所增加。如何看待欧方一些人士提出的对华制度性竞争？在美国因素、俄乌冲突等背景下，中方如何推进中欧关系？谢谢。
Rosia Slovenia. China and Europe seem to have rising differences over the past years, and some in Europe view China as a systemic rival. How do you comment on that? Given the American factor and the Russia-Ukraine conflict, how will China develop its relations with Europe? Thank you.
谢谢你的提问。去年以来，习近平主席同法国总统马克龙、德国总理舒尔茨、欧洲理事会主席米歇尔等欧洲领导人频密互动，达成重要共识。可以说，去年来中欧关系稳定发展。中欧双方领导人一致同意推动中欧关系健康稳定发展，反对新冷战和阵营对抗，反对经济脱钩，都主张维护以联合国为核心的国际体系，致力于维护国际经贸规则和秩序，践行多边主义。
Thank you for the question. China-Europe relations have grown steadily since last year. President Xi Jinping had frequent interactions and reached important consensus with European leaders, including French President Emmanuel Macron, German Chancellor Olaf Scholz, and President of the European Council Charles Michel. Both sides agreed to work for the sound and stable development of China-Europe relations and reject a new Cold War, bloc confrontation, and economic decoupling. Both sides stand for upholding the UN-centered international system, safeguarding international economic and trade rules and order, and practicing multilateralism.
中欧历史文化发展水平、意识形态存在差异，所以双方在一些问题上看法不同，这很正常，应该以建设性的态度保持沟通协商。中欧之间没有根本的战略分歧和冲突，有的是广泛的共同利益和长期积累的合作基础。
China and Europe are different in terms of history, culture, development level, and ideology. It is only natural for the two sides to have divergent views on certain issues. What's important is to keep up communication and consultation with a constructive attitude. Between China and Europe, there is no fundamental strategic disagreements or conflicts. What the two sides have are broad common interests and cooperation bases built up over many years.
那么近年来，一些人渲染中欧是制度性对手，鼓噪中国挑战中国威胁，从根本上讲，是出于冷战思维和意识形态偏见，是为其自身私利服务的。这不符合中欧双方的根本和长远利益，也有悖于国际社会的共同期待和历史潮流。
In recent years, we've seen some people claiming that China and Europe are systemic rivals, and they've been playing up the so-called China challenge or China threat. Fundamentally speaking, such rhetoric is driven by the Cold War mentality and ideological biases. It is intended to serve their selfish interests. Such a characterization is not in the fundamental and long-term interest of either China or Europe. It also goes against the common aspirations of the international community and the trend of history.
中方始终视欧洲为全面战略伙伴，支持欧盟战略自主，支持欧洲团结繁荣，支持欧盟在国际事务中发挥建设性作用。希望欧方同中方一道，坚持相互尊重、互利共赢、对话合作，扩大贸易和双向投资，携手应对气候变化等全球性挑战，推动政治解决国际和地区热点问题，为世界的和平与发展做出更大的贡献。谢谢。
China always sees in Europe a comprehensive strategic partner. China supports EU strategic autonomy, supports a united and prosperous Europe, and supports a constructive role by the EU in international affairs. We hope the European side will work with China to have more dialogue and cooperation on the basis of mutual respect and achieve win-win outcomes. Together, China and Europe can increase trade and two-way investment, join hands to tackle global challenges like climate change, push for the political settlement of international and regional hotspots, and make greater contributions to world peace and development. Thank you.
谢谢，请继续提问。请西区第4排第2位女士提问，谢谢。
谢谢主持人。法制日报全媒体记者提问，发言人您好，我们注意到这次会议有一项重要议程是要审议立法法修正草案。那么此次立法法修改的主要内容是哪些？还有就是草案如何体现坚持和发展全过程人民民主的重大理念？谢谢。
Legal Daily. Mr. Spokesperson, an important agenda item of this NPC session is to deliberate on a draft amendment to the legislation law. What are the main revisions this time, and how will the draft amendment uphold and advance whole process people's democracy? Thank you.
好，谢谢你的提问。立法法是规范国家立法制度和立法活动，维护社会主义法治统一的基本法律。这次修法主要有以下内容。
Thank you for the question. The legislation law is a basic law that provides for the legislative system and activities of the state and safeguards the uniformity in the legal system. The key revisions this time are as follows.
一是完善立法指导思想和原则；二是加强宪法实施和监督，明确立法和备案审查工作中的合宪性审查要求；三是完善立法决策与改革决策相衔接、相统一的制度机制，完善授权决定制度；四是贯彻和体现全过程人民民主重大理念；五是明确科学立法、民主立法、 依法立法的有关要求。
First, improving the guiding principle of legislation. Second, enhancing the implementation and oversight of the Constitution, identifying the constitutional review requirements in legislation and the record and review system for normative documents. Third, improving the institutions and mechanisms for harmony and compatibility between legislation and reform decisions, and improving the system of authorizing decisions. Fourth, putting into practice whole process people's democracy. Fifth, setting out relevant requirements for sound, democratic, and law-based legislation.
六是明确监察法规的法律地位，完善部门规章，制定主体。七是完善社区的市的立法权限，明确地方立法中的区域协同立法及其工作机制。八是完善备案审查制度。九是加强立法宣传工作。
Sixth, identifying the legal status of supervisory law and regulations and improving the subjects of making departmental regulations. Seventh, improving the legislative authority of cities with districts and clarifying coordinated legislation among regions and its working mechanism. Eighth, improving the record and review system for normative documents. And ninth, raising public awareness of legislation.
这次修法将贯彻全过程人民民主重大理念及其要求，总结实践经验，完善相关制度规范，确保立法工作中各个环节都能听到人民的声音，了解基层情况，积极回应人民群众的新要求、新期盼。谢谢。
The revision this time will implement whole process people's democracy and its requirements, sum up experience, and improve relevant institutions and standards to make sure that every link of the legislative process is informed by people's voices and reality at the grassroots level, and that people's new requirements and new expectations are actively met. Thank you.
谢谢，请继续提问。请东区第4排第2位男士提问，谢谢。
谢谢主持人，发言人你好，新京报记者提问。我的问题是关于人大代表的。中国新一轮的人大代表选举工作已经完成了，您可否介绍一下我国人大代表在构成上有什么特点，以及如何推动各级人大代表在密切联系人民群众方面更好地发挥作用？谢谢。
Beijing News. China has concluded a new round of elections for deputies to the People's Congresses. What are the characteristics of their composition? What will be done to make the deputies at various levels better play their role in maintaining close ties with the people? Thank you.
谢谢你的提问。中国的人大代表选举是世界上规模最大的民主选举，是中国全过程人民民主的生动实践。中国的人大代表具有广泛的代表性，每一个地区、每一个行业、每一个领域、每一个民族都有人大代表。各级人大代表中，基层群众都占有相当比例。比如262万多名县乡两级人大代表中，一线工人、农民、专业技术人员等基层代表在县级人大代表中所占的比重为52.53%，在乡级人大代表中所占比重为76.75%。
Thank you for the question. The election of People's Congress's deputies in China is the largest scale democratic election in the world. It is a good testament to China's whole process people's democracy. The deputies are broadly representative, covering every region, every sector, every field, and every ethnic group. At each level of People's Congresses, a considerable share of the deputies are from the grassroots. For instance, among the 2.62 million deputies at the county and township levels, workers, farmers, and technical experts take up 52.53% of the total at the county level and 76.75% at the township level.
在2977名14届全国人大代表中，少数民族代表442名，占代表总数的14.85%。全国55个少数民族都有代表，归侨代表42名，妇女代表790名，占代表总数的26.54%。一线工人、农民代表497名，占代表总数的16.69%。
For the 14th NPC, we have altogether 2,977 deputies. Among them, 442 are from ethnic groups, accounting for 14.85% of the total and covering every one of the 55 ethnic minority groups. 42 are returned overseas Chinese, 790 are women, which is 26.54% of the total. 497 are workers and farmers, accounting for 16.69% of the total.
在代表密切联系群众方面，目前全国各地设立了20多万个代表之家、代表联络站，基本实现了乡镇和街道的全覆盖。各级人大以代表之家、代表联络站等平台为依托，结合人大职责或职权，广泛组织代表通过调研、视察、走访、座谈等方式，深入了解民情民意，积极为民代言发声，推动解决群众提出的急难愁盼等问题，彰显人民代表大会的制度优越性。谢谢。
For the deputies to maintain close ties with the people, some 200,000 deputies' homes and contact stations have been set up nationwide, basically achieving full coverage in towns and communities. These deputies' homes and contact stations have served as important platforms for deputies to perform their duties. The People's Congresses at various levels organize study tours, inspections, visits, and seminars for the deputies to learn what's on people's mind, make their voices heard, and help to address pressing difficulties and concerns of the people. All these demonstrate the strength of the system of the People's Congresses. Thank you.
谢谢，请继续提问。请西区第3排第4位男士，谢谢。
谢谢主持人，发言人您好，凤凰卫视、凤凰网、凤凰秀记者提问关于香港的问题。13届全国人大期间是制定了香港国安法，香港国安法出台2年时间，全国人大如何去看法律的实施成效？另外，去年底港区是完成了14届全国人大代表的换届选举，如何去评价这次选举呢？谢谢。
Phoenix TV, my question is about Hong Kong. The 13th NPC formulated the law on safeguarding national security in Hong Kong, and now it's been over 2 years since the law was enacted. How effective is the law? Hong Kong concluded the election of deputies to the 14th NPC at the end of last year. And Mr. Spokesperson, how do you comment on the election? Thank you.
谢谢你的提问。实际上你是问了2个问题，我先回答你第一个问题。制定实施香港国安法是一国两制实践发展的重要里程碑。香港国安法实施以来，维护国家安全的制度机制不断完善，国家安全得到有力保障，社会秩序迅速恢复，法治得到彰显，营商环境不断改善，发展重回正轨，香港居民的权利自由得到更好保障，香港局势实现由乱到治的重大转折。香港民调显示，75.7%的香港居民对国安法实施的成效感到满意。
Thank you. On your first question, the formulation and enactment of the national security law is an important milestone in the practice of one country, two systems. Since the national security law took effect, the institutions and mechanisms for safeguarding national security are further improved. National security is effectively protected, social order is resumed rapidly, the rule of law is ensured, business environment keeps improving, development has been brought back to normal, the rights and freedoms of Hong Kong residents are better protected, and Hong Kong has had a major turn from chaos to stability. Opinion polls suggest that 75.7% of Hong Kong citizens are satisfied with the implementation of the national security law.
去年底，全国人大常委会就香港国安法有关条款作出解释，阐明了相关条文的法律含义，明确了解决有关问题的方式和途径，及时妥善解决了香港国安法实施中遇到的实际问题。我们将继续坚持和完善一国两制制度体系，切实维护宪法和香港基本法确定的特别行政区宪制秩序，切实维护国家主权、安全、发展利益。
At the end of last year, the NPC Standing Committee interpreted relevant provisions in the national security law, expounding the legal definition of relevant clauses and making clear the means and pathways of resolving relevant issues. This helped to address the practical problems in the implementation of the national security law in a proper and timely manner. We will continue to uphold and improve the system for implementing one country, two systems, maintain constitutional order in Hong Kong as stipulated in the Constitution and the basic law of the Hong Kong SAR, and safeguard national sovereignty, security, and development interests.
关于你的第二个问题，去年13届全国人大5次会议通过了香港特别行政区选举14届全国人大代表的办法。全国人大代表选举会议落实爱国者治港的原则，依法选举产生了香港新一届全国人大代表。相信新一届香港全国人大代表一定会秉承爱国爱港、模范遵守宪法和基本法，全面准确贯彻一国两制方针的光荣传统，效忠中华人民共和国和香港特别行政区，坚定维护国家主权、安全、发展利益，为中华民族伟大复兴，为香港长期繁荣稳定做出 更大的贡献。谢谢。
On your second question, the fifth session of the 13th NPC adopted the methods on Hong Kong SAR's election of deputies to the 14th NPC. Hong Kong's deputies to the new NPC term were elected at the election meetings following the principle of patriots administering Hong Kong. We believe Hong Kong's deputies to the new NPC term will carry forward the proud traditions of loving the country and loving Hong Kong, observing the Constitution and the Basic Law, and fully and faithfully implementing one country, two systems. We believe they will be loyal to the People's Republic of China and to the Hong Kong SAR, firmly safeguard national sovereignty, security, and development interests, and make greater contributions to national rejuvenation and lasting prosperity and stability of Hong Kong. Thank you.
谢谢，请继续提问。请东区第2排第4位女士，谢谢。
Hello, and thank you. I'm a reporter from Reuters, and I have a question about the defense budget. Our question is, will the increase in China's defense budget this year be bigger than the increase in 2022? By how much will the defense budget increase? And if the increase will be larger than in the past, why so? Thank you.
路透社，今年中国国防预算的增幅是否会比2022年更大？将增加多少？如果增幅比过去大，原因是什么？谢谢。
好，谢谢你的提问。国防预算是国家整体预算的一部分，由全国人大审查批准。人大代表即将审议预算草案，所以具体的数字到时候就能知道。
Thank you for the question. Defense budget is a part of the overall national budget, which is subject to the review and approval of the National People's Congress. The draft budgets for this year will be reviewed at the upcoming session. As for the specific figures, you will know in due course.
国防费的规模是综合考虑国防建设需求以及国民经济发展的水平而确定的，这也是世界各国的通行做法。国防费的增长既是应对复杂安全挑战的需要，也是履行大国责任的需要。中国国防费占国内生产总值的比重，多年来基本稳定，保持基本稳定，低于世界平均水平，增长幅度也是比较适度和合理的。
Defense spending is determined based on overall consideration of the need for defense building and the economic development level of a country. This is common practice across the world. The increase in defense spending is needed for meeting the complex security challenges and for China to fulfill its responsibilities as a major country. China's defense spending as a share of GDP has been kept basically stable for many years. It is lower than the world average, and the increase is appropriate and reasonable.
中国的前途同世界的前途是紧密联系在一起的。中国军事的现代化不会对任何国家构成威胁，反而是维护地区稳定和世界和平的积极力量。谢谢。
China's future is closely intertwined with that of the entire world. China's military modernization will not be a threat to any country. On the contrary, it will only be a positive force for safeguarding regional stability and world peace. Thank you.
谢谢。 因为现在已经1点10分了，大家都很辛苦，谢谢大家。我们现在请提最后一个问题。
In the interest of time, we'll take one more question.
请西区第2排第2位男士提问，谢谢。
谢谢。新华社记者提问：党的20大报告提出要发展全过程人民民主，保障人民当家作主。我们注意到，中国近年来修改和制定了多部贴近民生、反映民众关切的法律，还建设了很多基层立法联系点，让普通群众表达意见。新一届全国人大将如何在现有工作基础上进一步推进和发展全过程人民民主？谢谢。
Xinhua News Agency. The report to the 20th CPC Congress required efforts to advance whole process people's democracy and ensure that the people run the country. We've noted that in recent years, China has formulated and revised many laws that have a direct bearing on people's well-being to address their concerns. And many local legislative outreach offices have been set up so that ordinary people can make their voices heard. How will the new term of the NPC build on past progress and further advance whole process people's democracy? Thank you.
谢谢你的提问。全过程人民民主是以习近平同志为核心的党中央，在深化对中国民主政治发展规律性认识的基础上提出的重大理念，是社会主义民主政治的本质属性。
Thank you for the question. Whole process people's democracy is a major concept proposed by the CPC Central Committee with Comrade Xi Jinping at its core, based on a profound understanding of the laws that underlie China's democracy. It is the defining feature of socialist democracy in China.
人民代表大会制度是实现我国全过程人民民主的重要制度载体。近年来，全国人大及其常委会坚决贯彻党中央的决策部署，认真履行宪法法律赋予的各项职责，把人民当家作主贯穿到人大的工作的全过程，贯穿立法全过程，制定了一批能够满足人民群众对美好生活向往和国家治理需要的法律。
The system of people's congresses is an important institutional vehicle in China's whole process people's democracy. In recent years, the NPC and its standing committee have firmly implemented the decisions and arrangements of the CPC Central Committee, earnestly performed duties as stipulated in the Constitution and laws, and ensured that the people run the country throughout NPC's work and the entire process of legislation. Many laws have been made to meet people's aspiration for a better life and the need for better governance.
刚才你提到了基层立法联系点。目前，全国人大常委会法工委在全国31个省区市设立了32个基层立法联系点，辐射带动了全国各地设立了5500多个基层立法联系点，形成了国家级、省级、市级联系点3级联动的工作格局。这些联系点已经成为让基层声音原汁原味抵达国家立法机关的直通车。
Just now you mentioned the local legislative outreach offices. To date, the Legislative Affairs Commission set up 32 such offices in 31 provinces, regions, and municipalities, and has driven the establishment of over 5,500 local offices nationwide. A three-tiered network of national, provincial, and municipal level legislative outreach offices has been put in place. These offices have, in a way, become through trains taking voices from the grassroots directly to national legislative bodies.
党的20大明确提出建设好基层立法联系点，新一届全国人大及其常委会将继续完善以宪法为核心的中国特色社会主义法律体系，通过贯彻实施选举法、代表法、全国人大组织法、地方组织法、立法法、监督法等一系列法律制度，进一步健全完善，保证人民依法实行民主选举、民主协商、民主决策、民主管理、民主监督的相关机制平台，为推进全过程人民民主提供更加坚实的法治保障。谢谢。
To ensure that local legislative outreach offices are well run is an explicit requirement of the 20th CPC Congress. The new term of the NPC and its standing committee will continue to improve the socialist legal system with Chinese characteristics with the Constitution at its core. We will continue to implement the electoral law, the law on deputies, organic law of the NPC, organization law for local people's congresses and local people's government, legislation law, supervision law, and other laws, improve the relevant mechanisms and platforms for democratic elections, consultations, decision-making, management, and oversight, and provide stronger legal safeguard for advancing whole process people's democracy. Thank you.
谢谢媒体朋友们，今天的新闻发布会到此结束，谢谢大家，谢谢发言人。
That is the end of this press conference. Thank you, Mr. Spokesperson. Thank you all.
That was a press conference held by the first plenary session of the 14th National People's Congress. A spokesperson has released the agenda for this year's gathering, and the plenary session will officially start on March the 5th and will conclude on March the 13th, 8.5 days in total. There are 9 major items on the agenda of this year's plenary session, including reviewing a government work report, a draft amendment to the legislation law, and also a reform plan on state institutions. Also, deputies will participate in the elections and decide on the appointment of members of state institutions. At the press conference, the spokesperson also answered 10 questions from journalists from both domestic and global. So, for more insight, we're joined in the studio again by Professor Xia Lu. Professor, so it looks like a whole process, people's democracy, is the key word of the year, because we listened to the term several times in the spokesperson's statement and also in his answers to all those 10 questions from journalists all around the world. But what about the implementation plan? Or have you got any new signals or messages from this press conference?
Yes, actually, when we talk about the whole process, people's democracy, we basically have 2 dimensions to understand this very important concept. The first is of the importance of institutional design. That's the institutional dimension. The second dimension is the practical dimension. And actually, we have been talking about in terms of the institutional design, institutional designing. You know, how should this institution be implemented? So there ought to be this kind of level. However, what is more more important is the realization or the implementation, the practical dimension. So just now during the press conference, I heard that the local legislature contact or local legislature outreach.
Yeah, I believe the term is a local legislative outreach office.
Outreach office, yes, outreach offices. This is very important. There are basically national, provincial, and municipal 3 levels, and they communicate and interact with each other so that they can generate the real grassroots levels opinion up through the national decision-making level. So I think this is a very important mechanism or dynamism of the whole process, people's democracy, because it covers the process and it covers the people, the 2 keywords. So in my opinion, this will be the main, let's say, features of China's democracy. The whole process, people's democracy in the future. And if this mechanism or the dynamism real works and real, let's say, put into effect, and that will be, highly possible, Chinese people, not only for their, let's say, election level, they get into this whole process, but also their opinion, their opinion about the daily life, their opinion about the daily operation of the country, of their local community, should be getting involved into the public affairs. So that's important.
Yes, institutionally speaking, offices like this and more mechanisms like this are quite crucial. But how would you explain these local legislative outreach offices to common people, common citizens all around the country? If they ask you, hey, what are these offices for? How do they relate to our daily lives? What would you say?
Yes, well, we can do a kind of a simple comparison because, I studied in Hong Kong SAR, and in Hong Kong, there are a lot of, let's say, this kind of offices for the city councillor or this legislative councillor. They open their office kind of 24/7, and they don't have, this kind of weekend or vacation. So if you are, let's say, a citizen living in this jurisdiction or living in his kind of a jurisdiction, you can just go to his office without any appointment. You can just drop by and talk to the city councillor or the legislative councillor, member of the legislature, and tell him or tell her about your kind of opinion about your grievances and your wish about a new law or a new regulation. And he or she, the city councillor or the legislative member, he would take a note about this kind of opinion, and he would explain to the citizen that lawmaking is a professional expertise. Something you said or something you are saying can be included into next session. Something you said maybe out of my research or out of my reach, out of my control, but we can do some kind of efforts to increase this kind of improve the situation. So in my opinion, in mainland China, this kind of local legislature outreach office can also play a role like this, comparatively like this.
But let's also remember the difference here, because as I know, in Hong Kong, city councillors is kind of a job, right? But in China, NPC deputies, it's more of a duty. So how would you explain the difference to residents on the Chinese mainland?
So that is why in mainland China, in the National People Congress or Local People Congress, there are standing committee. So we all know that, let's take the national level as an example. So we have 2,977 deputies in the national level, and they would have in this session for 13 days, right? But most of them, let's say, are kind of, they have their own main job. For example, they are teachers, and they are kind of managers, and they are the workers, and even farmers. However, they would elect a standing committee. This standing committee would consist of less than 200 people, and they are, let's say, full-time legislator, full-time lawmaker, and not only in national level, but also in provincial, city, and the county level. They all have a standing committee. So this kind of a standing committee member, they are full-time legislator, full-time lawmaker, and their job is to, supposed to listen to the people's opinion, collect the people's opinion, and take notice about people's opinion, and then generate into the law-making suggestion. Because different people will have different specific, particular idea, but this kind of particular idea does not necessarily mean the legislative the suggestion. So this kind of job of the standing committee members, their job is to generate the particular idea into, transform the particular idea opinion into the general legislative suggestion, so that the lawmaking process can be processed level to level.
That's daily practice. But I'm also quite interested in the institutional building, because if you take a look at the 9 items on this year's MPC plenary session agenda, most of them are quite consistent and constant items. For example, reviewing government work report, budgets, of course, and also a work report from Standing Committee of the MPC, as you just explained. But what about this year's item, a draft amendment on legislation law? How important is legislation law?
Yes, just like I mentioned, lawmaking actually is professional expertise, like product making, like a professor, like the lawyer, and like all this kind of professional work. So lawmaking is kind of highly professional. This kind of lawmakers, they are elected by the people, and they have this responsibility to make good laws. And this good law does not necessarily mean written in the kind of beautiful words, but also these laws should be put into enact or put into effect. Really
should be constitutional.
Exactly.
At first.
Yes, it should be constitutional. That is very important, and then should be, let's say, related to our daily life, and should, let's say, should be in accordance with the reform, the deep reform, let's say, decision making. So the legislation law, or the law of legislation, is a standardized procedure or standardized regulation, to put down some kind of basic principle, basic procedure, basic mechanism, basic dynamism of how a group of particular opinion could be transformed into a general law. So people cannot, make a law at their discretion. People cannot make a law, as their wish. So they have to do this kind of thing in a boundary, and that boundary should be, restricted by the legislation law. So that is important, and it is a common kind of activity across the whole world. Each and every country has its similar legislation law. Yeah.
Right. So would you say, having said so much on both institutional building and the daily practices of this whole process, people's democracy, would you say it's also an important part maybe of China's overall reform? Because you still need to explain to common people, because all those rights are written in the constitution and we're entitled to all those rights. So where is the reform? Where does the reform stand in the whole process?
One of the kind of points about this kind of reform to get people more involved into this lawmaking session or lawmaking procedure is that to inform people about, inform the ordinary people about the whole process about lawmaking, whole process about the discussion, whole process about the opinion exchange, this kind of thing. So during the press conference, the spokesperson also mentioned that during the plenary session, we can have multiple ways to be informed about the whole the process of the plenary session. Like we can watch TV, we can get online the live the discussion, and we can also have this kind of the chat forum, right? So ordinary people can really write down their opinion, and to make sure that their opinion could be heard and could be noticed by this deputy. So that is also the essence of the process, because process is a moving or is a dynamic, let's say, a phenomenon, right? Especially in the lawmaking, procedure, lawmaking, this kind of activity. So it is a moving one. It is a kind of dynamic situation rather than a static situation. And I think in the future we should let ordinary people know more about the lawmaking procedure. Although it is professional expertise, people still can have basic information about what's the real principle of the law, and what should we pay attention in terms of the law, and so on and so forth. Yeah.
Right. How about we take a look at global attention this year? I noticed that the first question in this press conference raised by foreign media is about China's draft law on foreign relations, and also the journalist was quite concerned on China's anti-measures on long-arm jurisdiction from certain countries. Tell us the role of the National People's Congress in legislative practices like this?
Basically, we can use one sentence to describe the role of the National People's Congress in terms of the international relation. That is to use the law, use the legal, let's say, tools or legal weapon to protect China's sovereignty, to protect China's kind of national security, and to protect China's development rights. That is the core rights or core national interest of China. And previously, we put too much attention on executive way or those kind of vocal way to protect China's interest. However, we know that in this international community, each and every country, especially the international relation and the governance, are based on law. We can say the law-based governance, right? So the law-based governance should be practiced not only in domestic issue but also in international issue. That is to say, we use the law framework, we use the law arm to protect China's core interest. In this way, well, each and every country is in an equal, let's say, status, right? So that's China's response to the long-arm jurisdiction. That's my take on this.
Thank you very much, Associate Professor Xia Lu from Renmin University of China. And that's it for our special coverage of the press conference from the first plenary session of the 14th National People's Congress. Now, the first session of the 14th National Committee of the Chinese People's Political Consultative Conference will open this afternoon in Beijing, and China's top legislature, the National People's Congress, will start its annual session on Sunday. Of course, CGTN will bring you the latest on the two sessions and all the details of the agenda. I'm Pan Deng in Beijing. Stay tuned.